Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Louise McCarthy. I'm the Director of Alumni Relations at Monash University. Tonight's event forms part of our Alumni Speaker Series, which showcases Monash world-class expertise and challenges you, the audience, on global issues. Tonight, our moderator and panel will explore the intersection between medicine, ethics, the law, and the politics of spin. I must also explain that as panel members are playing fictitious roles this evening, the views they express may not be their own. Dr. Linda Barclay, lecturer in the Centre for Human Ethics, Bioethics at Monash University. Please join me in welcoming Linda. Mr. David Imber, Strategy, Policy and Public Affairs Consultant. Ms. Liberty Sanger, Principal, Maurice Blackburn. Mr. Julian Burnside, AO, QC, Barrister. Dr. Sally Coburn, General Practitioner and Media Commentator. Professor Ed Byrne, AO, Vice-Chancellor and President, Monash University. Ms. Carmel Wallace, Monash student and editor of the Monash student newspaper, Lot's Wife. Associate Professor Nicholas Tonti Filippini, Associate Dean and Head of Bioethics, John Paul II Institute for Marriage and Family. Associate Professor Bibi Loff, Director, Michael Kirby Centre for Public Health and Human Rights. Mr. Andrew Way, Chief Executive Officer, Alfred Health. Professor Paul Zimmet, AO, Director Emeritus, Baker IDI Heart and Diabetes Institute. And finally, our moderator for the evening, Mr. Ben Richards, Director, Atticus Communications.
Three things will happen tonight, ladies and gentlemen. There will be a drug trial in India that goes a little pear-shaped. There will be a child the same age as my daughter who dies because of diarrhoea, because of a very common waterborne parasite. And there will be a lady in Coburg who is told that she's dying. She has an inoperable brain tumour. It does not respond to initial treatment. But first, a little on the drug Redoxylin. Redoxylin is made by the Altera company. David Imber, you're engaged by the Altera company as Director of Therapeutic Communications and Solutions. Long way from the tenants' union. They must be paying you lots.
Money well spent.
Redoxylin is enormously expensive. It will cost $80,000 per treatment cycle. Redoxylin has been shown in some cases to shrink some tumours reported internationally, but none of them have ever gone into remission completely. Redoxylin is supported by some insurers in the United States, but it is not available publicly funded in Australia. David Imber, you have a budget of $1.2 million to manage the public communications around Redoxylin. Been busy?
Very busy.
What have you been up to?
Look, it cost a lot of money to inform people of the benefits of wondrous new drug technologies. Sometimes communications is a much easier way to cut through these messages with emotion rather than using efficacy and stats and facts. We talk about emotion when we're talking about new drugs that can save lives. That's the kind of language that people want to hear.
What does $1.2 million buy?
Well, it certainly secures the services of a communications firm that can do everything from design the packet to ensure that it gets listed on the pharmaceutical benefits scheme.
Dr. Sally Coburn.
It's a cut-price job. They all pay a lot more than that.
It's David's first major pharmaceutical client. He's very excited. Dr. Sally Coburn, a patient of yours by the name of Anne has been seeing you as a GP for some 7 years. You've gone the journey with her as she's been diagnosed with this tumour, as she's undergone the first cycle of treatment, as she's been profoundly disappointed as it continues to grow. She has found out about the drug Redoxolin on a website, incidentally set up by you, David.
It doesn't look like it's been set up by me.
Oh, no, it's very classy. But on the public chat forum, she hears remarkable stories from international patients with tumours just like hers. Redoxolin, they're even offering to pay for it. Redoxolin has extraordinary side effects. It will cause her wasting. It will ruin her appetite. Mm-hmm. It will cause her memory loss. It will potentially damage her liver. And of course, should she become pregnant, it will have catastrophic impacts upon the fetus. What options do you give her?
Well, when you say what options, I'd obviously want to explore how she's feeling about this. I gather it's inoperable. She's been told this by the surgeon. I gather there are no other treatments available to her.
Nothing.
Certainly, I think, obviously, hope is one thing that she can have, but we need to talk about the possibility of whether this medication may be appropriate for her. I need to be open about it. I want to know the facts. I want to know what her chances are and make sure that she understands the risks and the benefits and can work out for herself what she feels about it.
The facts are that nobody has survived this tumour, even by taking Redoxolin, but like a lot of expensive drugs, it will extend her life.
By how long?
Maybe 15 months.
Okay. So I need to. So then they're willing to offer it to her for free, this drug?
Indeed.
Okay, so the only problem with this drug obviously is A, it doesn't cure, and B, what are the side effects, and and does she understand the risks of those side effects, and is she willing to accept those risks?
She's euphoric. There's hope.
Look, I think if that's the case, obviously I'd want to confer with other doctors. I wouldn't just make this decision myself. I'd want to speak to the medical director of the company that David works for, obviously, but not that I'd take necessarily what he says as the truth.
Oh, they assure you it's fantastic.
I'd want to read the papers, and obviously you've told me the papers are as such that really no one has gone into remission. The side effects sound horrific, and I really want her to understand those.
Are we good at telling people in Australia you are dying?
No, we're not good at telling people they're dying. It's a very difficult thing to tell people. We always want to give them hope, and I think it's reasonable to give them hope because, frankly, you're talking about population statistics. So you might say no one has survived this. She may say I'm the one who may break those statistics, and it's reasonable to have hope. I don't treat populations, I treat individuals. So I need to work out with her, walk through with her all these risks, and she needs to work out her risk-benefit ratio.
Andrew Way, as head of the Chifley Health Centre, you have an oncologist who is prepared to administer the treatment. The pharmacological company is prepared to pay for the treatment. There's no issue here, is there?
I think that the point that Sally was making, where the doctor has a one-to-one relationship with the patient and is only looking at that one-to-one relationship, is really important. The organisational context is different in the public system, and we're talking here about a publicly funded system. The issue is how do you balance the overall resources available? Now, in this case, if we can assure ourselves that there is a cost to society of providing this patient with a treatment that's just about side effects, and the company will fund it and it's medically approved, and we've got an arrangement that says subsequent funds will be available for subsequent treatments, so it's not a one-off hit, then I think there is issues that we would need to consider as a hospital about how we engage in that treatment.
So can she be treated at your hospital?
We would want to understand who the researcher was that was undertaking this treatment. We wouldn't put in place a novel treatment without going through a series of protocols to establish that this was a safe thing to do, that the patient wasn't coming to undue harm, that there was an established research protocol, and that this was going to be evaluated in the proper way.
This is an FDA-approved drug. Insurers in America, multiple insurers, will pay for it.
This is Australia, not America. Its FDA approval is irrelevant in that respect.
Okay. You end up going through those protocols. She's allowed to be treated at your hospital. And the treatment works outstandingly well. Over the next 5 months, the tumour shrinks significantly. Oncologists are astounded at the effect that this drug is having. And Nick Tonti-Filippini, it's at this stage that you receive a call from your former pupil, Anne, and she's euphoric because she says, Nick, my former husband came around 3 months ago to give me the marijuana that I'm self-medicating with. And
one of my former pupils?
One of your former pupils, it does happen. I assure you. And I'm pregnant.
Well, that happens.
I've spent 3 years of my marriage trying to get pregnant. My husband, who gambles and lies, has finally driven me away. We're no longer together. I don't want him to be part of my life. I don't want him to be part of the rest of my life. But the medication which is saving my life is a Category X drug. It was found to have significant impacts upon the fetuses of mammals in testing. There is a near certainty that it will cause damage to my fetus. On the other hand, I feel that my life has been given purpose. I've always wanted to have a child. I'm 35. This is the reason, surely, I'm alive. She seeks your counsel.
You've answered a lot of the questions that I would be wanting to explore in terms of what her attitudes are. Because in these circumstances, that's, as an ethicist, you work through the values that the person has. And so she's identified clear values that she, despite the teratogenic effects of the drug, that she wants to continue with the pregnancy. So the issue of abortion is not on the table as far as she's concerned. I guess the issue is whether she continues with taking the drug.
She wants to take the drug.
Okay, so she's got a problem with respect to the child she's carrying. She's intent on having the child. If she keeps continuing with the drug, then while that preserves her health, it presumably makes things worse for the child. I'm not sure, when you say it's teratogenic, I'm not sure whether that's whether a once-off usage does that or whether it's worse because she continues with it.
The trials weren't good on one-off usage.
So I'm not sure whether there's an issue about her continuing with the drug or not, whether continuing with it will make any difference.
It will, potentially, yes. There will potentially be damage to the fetus at any given stage.
What I'm saying is, does the fact that she's been using it to this point, she's 3 months pregnant, does continuing to use it make a difference to the child?
Yes.
Okay. Well, all I can do in those circumstances is go through with her the way that she's assessed it. And no doubt she's thought through the teratogenic effects and made a decision to both continue with the drug and continue with the pregnancy. My role is really to clarify what her values are and not to try and make her do one thing or another.
She's conflicted.
Yeah. Obviously she'd be conflicted. Any woman would be conflicted in circumstances where it's a question of her life versus damage to the child. And that to me is the major issue for her. But I don't think there's a cut and dried answer either way. I wouldn't be trying to say to her, you should do this or you should do that. You've outlined what her values are. She's made a decision to both continue with the treatment, which is in her interests, but not in the child's, but to continue with the pregnancy. All we can do is all you can try to do with somebody in those circumstances is give them support so they can make a good decision, make a decision that fits with their values. You can't make a decision for them. You try to reduce the pressure on them, so you try and explore with the issues. Now, one of the issues here is the estranged husband, and this is his child also. I don't think anybody here, anybody would want to advocate the view that male partners have any kind of rights over what happens during pregnancy. I know certainly on the committee I sat on in relation to research during pregnancy for the National Health and Medical Research Council was that...
well, in fact, as we speak, the husband is calling Julian Burnside, but that might come about later on.
Yeah. But from our point of view, basically the involvement that the male partner has in the pregnancy is limited by what role she gives him. And if she's excluded him from this, then he really, because this is something that's happening within her, anything that happens to the child only happens through her. You can't give him any more role than that.
Sally Coburn, she doesn't feel as though she's in a position to make a decision, and she calls upon your counsel.
Well, the first thing I just want to do is I'd make a quick call to Julian Burnside to say I did discuss the notion of contraception and its importance to her as a risk factor. I just wanted to make that quite clear.
Indeed you did.
Yes,
you were very explicit.
Diligent.
You discharged your duties well.
Thank you.
She did inform you that being a Catholic, she would have a little difficulty with that, but she was taking contraception as you advised.
And it probably failed then, obviously.
It did.
Okay.
It happens
Look,
too.
I agree. I know this comes as a shock, Nick, but I agree with everything you said.
It does come as a shock.
Thank you. Indeed, this is the woman needs to be able to make a decision. We cannot make it for her, but we need to assist her to understand her options. And certainly I would be asking her about her support systems, who's at home with her, who does she confide in, who does she trust. I'd also want to know some other things. You said that there was ongoing risks to the fetus, but we're talking about teratogenicity. Now, teratogenicity can be anything from maybe missing one finger or a cleft lip through to major fetal deformities. I'd want to know what sort of teratogenicity we're talking about with this drug. I'd really want to know more about that.
Well, it's more than something like, for instance, Down syndrome. Mm-hmm. It's significant limb deformity,
disability.
It's profound heart deformity, and in some cases no liver function whatsoever.
Okay.
Nobody on a current affair is going to hear that, though.
Oh no.
Okay. I suppose the other thing I'd want to know is it's okay, with regard to this medication, how it works in terms of how much more is she going to need. So we need to look into what is the risk of this, and that involves involving multiple doctors. My colleagues at Chifley Institute, I'd want to be talking to them. After all, they're involved too. They gave her the drug.
They're very involved.
I strongly, though, support Nick's comment that this is a woman who wants to keep this pregnancy going, and no one has the right to make that decision for her. It is her decision. However, I need to make it clear to her the risks involved in continuing the pregnancy. I need to make it clear to her the risks involved in stopping the drug. That's what my role would be. And to support her, I'd be wanting to see her on frequent occasions, and her to bring some support people with her. Probably want to refer her to a psychologist as well.
Liberty Sanger, you're a partner at a well-known plaintiff law firm, Morris Slater Proprietary Limited.
I knew it would happen eventually.
I didn't think that merger was ever going to go ahead.
It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary what can happen in a hypothetical. I've always wanted that merger to happen. What are the legal risks here for the hospital?
Well, it's well established that the hospital owes a duty not only to the mother but also to the unborn child. So I think it would be very problematic for the hospital to decide to proceed with treatment, even if it was the express wish of the mother, knowing the risks to the unborn child. because the hospital could be liable for an action from the child for the damage caused as a result of the mother taking that drug and the hospital providing that drug to the mother.
Wrongful life.
Not so much wrongful life. It's an action taken on behalf of the child. It's more a case of wrongful birth if the parents were to proceed with that action, but in the name of the child, and essentially a very potentially expensive claim because you're looking at the cost of medical care for life, potentially loss of wages for life. It's not something that the hospital would want to expose themselves to from a legal point of view, putting aside the ethical considerations.
Andrew, does this change things?
I think the unborn child brings in a new dimension to this. So the professional status of the organisation, we would want to assure ourselves that we were compliant with the protocols around the use of this drug in its trial stage. Almost certainly known pregnancy, would prohibit its use, and that would be the end of her ability to participate in the trial.
I'm surprised by that.
So you would say that's it?
That's the ability of the organisation to offer participation in a trial of this drug, yes.
It's the baby or the drugs?
It's the baby or the participation in this trial. Whether she chooses to go elsewhere, offline, to somewhere less reputable and seek drugs and administration in a different way, you can't stop individuals seeking that. But in terms of establishing treatment with a recognised quality provider, that would have to be in the basis of an established trial and an established process, and her pregnancy would preclude that.
Baby Loff, you consult as a bioethicist to the Chifley Health Centre. Andrew seeks your counsel. What do you say?
I've got a couple of questions. First of all, I didn't think this was a trial.
It's a drug which is being paid for by the pharmacological company involved.
But it's not a trial.
It's not a trial. It's been trialled in the United States. It's just not funded publicly in Australia. Altera are kindly, out of the goodness of their hearts, funding this woman's treatment.
So we've taken this on as a trial drug?
No. You've taken this on as a treatment?
No, there's a completely different way of getting into the ability to use that drug. We would not take on unlicensed drugs without a protocol around their use. It wouldn't get through our approval mechanisms. Using a drug that has got such known difficulties without an approval would be almost impossible in the public system.
So is there a protocol governing pregnancy?
If the drug were to have been in use, then there may well have been a pregnancy test, or at least there would have certainly been an assessment of whether the individual thought they were pregnant or had a risk of being pregnant.
And indeed, at the time of the administration of the drug, there was no pregnancy. So, Baby Loff?
There's still questions. If it's not approved for use in Australia, even though it's been approved by the FDA, there are issues to be sorted out there. If it is approved for use in Australia, which it doesn't sound like it is, then it would be the mother requesting treatment for herself, irrespective of the fact that she's pregnant. And whilst there is not necessarily an obligation to provide that sort of treatment, I would think that if it was approved for use in this country, that would create a stronger basis for giving her the drug.
Julian Burnside, Ray White is Anne's former husband. He's a member of a charismatic church called Mountain Melodies. And he's been following every detail of his wife's treatment on the Altera website, which doesn't look like the Altera website, through her public postings. And he has come to you and said, I believe that there is, by commission, about to be harm done to an unborn child. We have to stop this. What can you do?
Well, first of all, I'm disappointed to get the brief for him rather than for the wife, because he sounds like a ratbag and a lowlife. But
Just between you and me, you can't stand the man.
Absolutely. I mean, you persuaded me of that right from the start. But, of course, everyone is entitled to be legally represented, and that's a very important principle. And I, have to acknowledge that he is the father of the child. And although I think the mother should have absolutely exclusive right to dictate what happens to her body, he is the father of the child. There's no denying that he has some apparently legitimate rights in connection with it. The child, after all, if born healthy, will long outlive the mother, whose life expectancy is very short. So I will put forward every respectable argument that I can think of on his behalf, and then I'll let a judge work it out.
And what is the strongest argument that you can put to a judge?
I think probably it's a combination of him being the biological father and the mother's life expectancy being very limited no matter what. So then the real question is, will a child be born healthy who can expect a normal life, or will a child be born with some degree of teratogenesis, with some sort of monstrous deformity, and the mother will die in any event? And I think those are respectable arguments. I don't know if they're winning arguments, but they're worth putting.
Andrew Way, have you ever come across this scenario in your professional career?
I've come across the situation where even licensed drugs of this nature have been sought for use in women who are pregnant, yes.
And what was the decision that the hospital reached?
The woman had to make a choice, treatment or the child.
Treatment or the child?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
If she wished to receive the treatment, she had to not be pregnant. If she wished to continue pregnancy, then she wasn't able to receive the treatment.
She had to be made unpregnant.
There were a number of options to do that, of course. One was to bring the child to a position where the fetus's maturity was such that they had a strong chance of survival through neonatal support, or alternative, and therefore the treatment for the mother was delayed by that period, or alternatively the mother would have sought a termination of the pregnancy.
I suspect that decision is about to be made for you because